In the quiet corners of the human soul, there lies a pain few can name, the ache of holding on to someone who no longer nurtures our spirit. It is a wound that breathes in silence, an invisible tether between love and suffering. Carl Jung once observed that what we resist persists, and nowhere is this more evident than in our attachment to those who hurt us. We tell ourselves that holding on means love, that endurance is strength, that to let go is to fail. But deep within, something begins to fracture. A quiet knowing whispers that the person we cling to is not the source of our pain, but its reflection. Jung believed that relationships mirror the landscape of the soul. Every bond we form is an invitation to meet a part of ourselves we have not yet faced. The person who wounds us most deeply often awakens the shadow within us, the forgotten emotions, the unmet needs, the unloved self waiting to be seen. To let go, then, is not merely an act of separation, it is a return, a slow, deliberate journey back to the self we abandoned while reaching for another. The human heart does not attach by logic, but by memory, emotion, and need. It clings not to what is good for it, but to what feels familiar. Carl Jung understood this deeply, that our attachments are rarely chosen with consciousness. They are born from the patterns that shaped us long before we could name them. We are drawn again and again to the same emotional story, not because we desire pain, but because the soul seeks wholeness. It tries to heal through repetition. We meet the same type of person, feel the same ache, and walk through the same emotional storms until awareness breaks the cycle. The one who hurts us becomes the mirror. Through them, we see the reflection of our own unmet love, our own hidden fears. To let go is not to reject them, but to release the illusion that they can complete what we have not yet given to ourselves. Jung called this process individuation, the movement toward becoming whole. It is the path where the conscious mind meets the unconscious, and we begin to see our wounds not as punishments, but as invitations to grow. When we ask why we hold on, the answer often lies not in love, but in fear. The fear of emptiness, of loneliness, of standing in front of life without the mask of another to protect us. And yet, letting go is precisely the act that transforms that fear into freedom. Every person carries a shadow, the unacknowledged part of the psyche that holds everything we reject, deny, or fear to face. To Jung, the shadow is not evil. It is simply the truth we have refused to accept. It lives beneath the surface of the self, waiting for moments of pain to rise into awareness. When someone hurts us, they often awaken the shadow. They draw out jealousy, anger, longing, or dependency, feelings we thought we had mastered or buried long ago. It is uncomfortable, even unbearable to see these emotions surface, but Jung taught that what we fail to make conscious will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. The person who wounds us becomes the vessel through which the shadow speaks. They show us the places within that still crave validation, that still fear rejection, that still seek worth in the eyes of another. The pain they cause is not random, it is revelatory. It points us back to the inner fractures we have ignored. To let go of them, we must first acknowledge the truth they mirror. We must meet our own shadow with compassion, for only when we embrace it can we stop projecting it onto others. Letting go, then, is not an act of forgetting. It is an act of integration, seeing that the person who hurt us was not our enemy, but our teacher, a guide sent to awaken the parts of ourselves we had long silenced. Letting go is not a single act. It is a gradual unraveling of everything we invested in another person. Each thought, each hope, each memory, all stitched together by longing and belief. To release them is to untie the threads of identity we wove around their presence. Carl Jung saw individuation as the sacred task of life, the journey toward becoming one's true self. When we give our power to another, we step away from that path. We begin to orbit their gravity, losing the quiet rhythm of our own becoming. To let go is to return. It is to reclaim the fragments we scattered in our attempts to be loved, understood, or accepted. Every moment of detachment is a quiet act of self-retrieval, a declaration that our peace no longer depends on their attention. In the depth of heartbreak, the ego trembles. It resists the loss, cries for control, and mourns the illusion of connection. But the deeper self, the soul, understands that release is not destruction, it is rebirth. It is the falling away of false attachments so that something truer may emerge. Letting go is not about erasing the other. It is about seeing them clearly, as they are, not as we wish them to be. It is about accepting that love does not always mean continuation, that closure is sometimes found not in reunion, but in understanding. Through letting go, we step closer to wholeness, and in doing so, we honor the sacred work of individuation, to live not from need, but from authenticity. There comes a moment in every journey of letting go when the pain begins to shift. It softens. It no longer demands answers or retribution. Instead, it begins to teach. Jung often described transformation as a form of psychic alchemy, a process in which suffering, when faced consciously, becomes gold. The pain that once felt unbearable turns into wisdom. The loss that seemed like an ending reveals itself as initiation. In this transformation, we begin to see that the person who hurt us was never the true source of our suffering. They merely touched the wound that was already there. They mirrored back to us the places where love had not yet reached. To let go is to enter this alchemy. It is to allow grief to burn away illusion, to allow the ego's need for control to dissolve in the fire of acceptance. And as the flames subside, what remains is not emptiness, but clarity. We realize that love, in its purest form, was never lost. It was simply misplaced in the image of another. It lives still, within the heart that dares to release. This is the transformation Jung spoke of, the birth of consciousness through the death of illusion. In letting go, we no longer chase what is gone. We begin to walk with what remains, a deeper wisdom, a calmer soul, a quieter strength. After the storm of attachment and loss, something begins to awaken. It is quiet at first, a subtle awareness that peace no longer depends on another's presence. This is the dawn of self-realization. Carl Jung believed that true growth arises when the conscious and unconscious meet, when we no longer run from what hurts, but allow it to teach us. In the act of letting go, we create the space for this union to occur. The old self, built around longing and need, dissolves, and a new self begins to form from the ashes of understanding. Rebirth is not dramatic, it is tender. It happens in the small moments, the morning you no longer check your phone, the night you can breathe without the weight of memory. It happens when you realize that forgiveness is not for them, but for the parts of you that stayed too long. This rebirth is not about forgetting the past, but integrating it. Every memory becomes a thread in the larger tapestry of who you are. The pain, once resisted, becomes purpose, and the love once lost returns inward, transforming into compassion, patience, and wisdom. When Jung spoke of individuation, this was its essence, to become whole through the integration of all that was once broken. The freedom that follows letting go is not loud or triumphant. It is still. It is the quiet certainty that you have found yourself again. You begin to see that the ending was never a punishment. It was an awakening, the soul's way of calling you home. In the quiet that follows letting go, life begins to speak in softer tones. There is no more chasing, no more pleading with fate, only the slow rhythm of breath, the pulse of being, and the understanding that everything that left was meant to shape what remains. Carl Jung often reminded us that we do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And in the darkness of heartbreak, we find that light not through denial, but through awareness. The person who hurt us becomes a sacred mirror, reflecting back both our pain and our potential. Through them, we learn that love cannot be possessed. It can only be experienced, shared, and released. To love without attachment is to honor the flow of life itself, to allow people to come and go without losing yourself in the process. This stillness, this quiet acceptance, is not resignation, it is strength in its truest form. It is the realization that everything you once saw in another, validation, peace, worth, has always been waiting within you. Jung's teachings remind us that the journey of the soul is not toward another, but inward. Every ending leads us back to the beginning, to the source of all love, which is the self-made whole. And so, as the echoes of the past fade, you stand in the sacred silence of understanding. You are no longer defined by what you lost, but by what you have found, the courage to be free, the wisdom to forgive, and the grace to begin again.